Hello and welcome to the virtual Community Science Open House. This is a presentation that's going to be showcasing the different community science programs that we will be offering this 2023 season. I'm Emily Burmeister, the conservation biologist.
I'm Hallie Minzer, the restoration ecologist.
And I'm Rebecca Biggs, the land steward.
Great. So to begin the presentation, we're going to go over the Natural Areas Program, why community science is important. Then I will lead off on window strike monitoring and nest box monitoring, followed by Rebecca, who will cover wetland monitoring and turtle basking surveys. And then lastly, we will have Hallie, who will go over the bumblebee monitoring program, as well as our seed collection program. All right, let's get started. The Milwaukee County Parks Natural Areas encompasses a little over 10,000 acres of natural areas. That actually represents 2/3 of the entire Milwaukee County Parks park system, which represents 75% of the remaining green space in Milwaukee County. So 10,000 acres of land is quite a lot, especially in an urban area that represents upland, lowland forests, and wetlands, and surrogate grasslands, you name it. We have 3 state natural areas. That is a DNR designation. We have 2 wetland gems, another special designation. We have 14 miles of Lake Michigan shoreline, then 85 miles of waterways. We're a major migration corridor, being on Lake Michigan for different wildlife species. And we also fall within the Wisconsin ecological tension zone, where our northern species meet our southern species, increasing diversity within Milwaukee County. Below is our mission statement. This is a slide is a snapshot of biodiversity within the county. This is all things that we've documented with the help of volunteers like yourself. So we've got 945 species of plants, with 75% of those representing native species, which is very encouraging. We've got 23 species of herptiles, so those are your salamanders and your frogs. We've got 119 species of breeding birds. Again, that migratory birds is 321 species, and that is because we're on a major migration corridor. 33 different species of mammals, 7 species of crayfish, 13 species of bumblebees, which we've actually added a few this past year. So it's always growing. These numbers are always growing. There's always more data that can be collected. There's still so much we don't know, and that's where wonderful volunteers like you come in. So these are some things that we participate in our program every day. We do a lot of restoration and invasive removal. Buckthorn is called job security. There's always going to be that for us to work on, but obviously many other invasives. We treat about a little under 50 different types of invasive species. We also have native plantings and do different seed dispersal projects as well. So we've done lots of prairie installations, and we do a big tree planting every fall, converting a lot of our old leased ag fields back into diverse native forests. And we collect a ton of seed and then go ahead and disperse that native seed all around our different restoration areas, especially in places where we've done extensive invasive removal. We also do a lot of vegetative mapping. So that actually is where we would take a tablet with a program called ArcMap or Field Maps out, and we map out the landscape. So we map invasive species as well as native species. This really helps us understand what we're looking at, how to manage it, and how we can be best effective by different control techniques and going back and monitoring those areas as well. We do a lot of wildlife surveys. The last few years, we've done a ton of ode surveys. So those are our dragonflies and damselflies. Last year, we actually started monitoring for bats, and we found some really interesting information from that. This is a picture of one of our survey results. And we also monitor things like butterflies and birds and mammals. We have camera trapping and lots of different type of survey techniques. All of this data, so all this plant data and the wildlife data, all of this is actually put into restoration management plans. So these are 10-year plans that we create for our different natural areas throughout the system. And so they include things like a budget and a timeline and restoration activities, and lots of lovely maps that we create from using all of this wonderful data that we've collected. And lastly, we'll cap it off. There's a lot of other things to do, but one of the larger things we do is community science. So we utilize volunteers like yourselves to help us collect data so that we can add it to these plans and share it with other partner organizations to better understand our landscape and the wildlife that uses it. So why use a community science model? Well, certainly we're going to collect just more data with less money. We know that it works. This is not a new invention. Things like the Christmas bird count, eBird, and iNaturalist have utilized the community to collect data, and it's been extremely successful. You don't need a PhD. You don't need any kind of special degree in conservation or biology in order to gather important data. When you have the public and scientists come together, you just have a larger research team, which means you can grasp larger data. You can also learn about conservation and research by participating in real scientific studies. Sometimes the best way to understand something is actually to dig in and get your hands dirty. And then lastly, it also increases public awareness and activity. We want to make sure that the public, knows what's happening in these public areas and better understands that landscape. So who are community scientists? Well, it could really be anyone, a parent, a child, it could be a couple, right? Retirees, a school teacher, or even a classroom, high school and college students, naturalists, nature enthusiasts, literally anyone can be a community scientist. And that's what makes it so great. What do we require in our community scientists? Well, certainly curiosity, your time, ability to follow protocol that will be shared with you, of course, an affinity for nature, people that want to be outside, people that understand that sometimes it gets hot, sometimes it's buggy, and that's all part of it. Attention to detail is certainly important, and really any level of experience that you come in with, we can get you fired up and ready to go. So what do we do with all the results that we gather? So tons of things, and these are just a few examples, but we improve our understanding of species populations and distributions. It's really a matter of if you understand where these species are lying on the landscape, then we can better understand them and better manage for them. So what does the health of populations tells us about the health of habitats? Why are the things happening why they're happening? How does land management practices affect species populations, and how can we improve this? Certainly, who is in decline and where? This was a big one that I didn't even think about before, but certainly if you're out looking and you're seeing gaps and holes, then we can understand why that's happening, and then contributing data to internal, local, and large-scale research. We use all of this data, like I said, in our restoration management plans, but also we're sharing it with partner organizations like the DNR and the EPA so that they understand as well. So the first program I'm going to talk about is bird window strike monitoring. Each one of our programs has a designation through a skill level and a commitment level. So the skill level for this program is low and the commitment level is high. And we'll kind of go over that. So why are we monitoring for bird window strikes? Well, birds are actually unable to comprehend the presence of glass, so they just fly right into it. And actually, according to a study in 2014, approximately 600 million birds die every year because of bird window strikes. And they're actually saying that number is most likely higher. It's probably closer to 1 billion. And the reason it's hard to capture that number is because many times, even though they hit glass, and they usually many times will fly off and pass away somewhere else. So it's hard to kind of get a specific number, but we know it's a lot. And there was also a study done in 2019 that I find really interesting, but that Chicago is actually the most dangerous city in the US for migratory birds, especially when it comes to bird window strikes. And Milwaukee was not a part of this study because it was the population was too small, but knowing that Chicago, which is just an hour and a half south of us, is the most dangerous city, I'm sure Milwaukee a lot of the same attributes as Chicago, being on a big lake shore and having a lot of mid to high story buildings. We are probably not far behind. So we have a responsibility to start monitoring and mitigating. So this is the protocol. Monitors are actually assigned a medium or a high-risk parks facility, and that is rated by UWM. They create something called a RABRA. It's a Rapid Architectural Bird Risk Assessment, and it really just rates buildings for percent glass and architectural hazards, things like that. And so that's how we came up with the medium high risk parks facilities. So someone will be assigned to that facility. And then in the early morning, you're gonna, around peak spring or fall migration, you just walk around the building clockwise and counterclockwise, taking your time to look up and down the facade of the building, observing all of the windows. And then you're just gonna take your phone and record any evidence of any kind of bird window strike. So that could be feathers, a smudge, fecal matter, or an actual bird. It's actually quite easy. This is what it'll look like on your smartphone. This is a free link that we'll give you to this survey. So you'll enter in your name, the park. They'll actually have a little map for location where it'll pick up and pinpoint where you are around the facility, the date, time, the floor, the evidence type, and then if you actually find a bird, there's a couple more questions to fill out, but it's quite simple. It takes less than 5 minutes. And all of that data is really telling us where hotspots are occurring. So each one of these dots on this map represents some kind of evidence of a bird window strike. And so with that data, we can implement mitigation. So we actually have gone out already and incorporated different techniques like bird window dots on some of these buildings and some of these hotspot areas. And the last part of this program is to continue surveying. So even though we've implemented mitigation, it's important to continue surveying these spots to know how successful they are, if we're making a difference, and if we need to adjust our techniques. Great. So that's that program. The next program is the NestMax monitoring program and maintenance. Emphasis on maintenance. The skill level is low. The commitment level is low. We actually have over 200 NestMax throughout the park system right now, and although, monitoring is extremely important, we actually have a good idea of what species are using these nest boxes. So at this point in time, it's the maintenance is actually very time consuming, and we'd really love some help on that. So if you're new, this is a great program for you to get started because it's not too complicated. Monitors are assigned to park. They are to close the nest boxes in the spring, and that's to prepare for breeding season. And then all you really are doing is just making notes of any repair needs. We'll go out and repair them. And then in the fall, you're going to go and open those nest boxes to prepare them for winter. And again, making note of any repair needs, but also cleaning out the boxes from the nests that are in them, and then making a note of the species occupied by nest ID. So the pictures below are most likely 99% of the different nests that you'll see. So we'll definitely be sharing that data with you and what to look for. You can take photos if you're not confident in your ID skills. But from left to right, we've got tree swallow, we've got bluebirds, house wrens, chickadees, and lastly, the unwanted visitors, the house sparrows. And then on the top right is a picture of a nest box missing the bottom, and that would be a great example of a nest box that would need a repair. The equipment for this program is just a map and a smartphone, so you know where all your nest boxes are located. The checklist for repairs. We would also recommend some hiking shoes. Some of these are located pretty far distance from each other, so you want to make sure you wear some comfortable shoes, maybe some gloves for cleaning out the nest boxes, or a mask. That's optional, but as you can see in this photo over here, sometimes little lovely field mice will make their way into a nest box and build their own little nests, and so we definitely want to make sure those are cleaned out, and because of that, you might want to wear a mask or gloves. And same thing when handling the nests of the birds that had occupied it. And that is all, and I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca to go over wetland monitoring.
Hey everyone, this is Rebecca. Thanks for tuning in today. This will be my second year leading the wetland monitoring program. However, my experience with it is a little older. I actually I credit this program for helping catalyze my career in environmental studies and conservation. I was actually a wetland monitor in a high school club and had a lot of fun catching salamanders, and now I'm so grateful to do it for a living. So I love this infographic because it really shows like how useful wetlands are to us as humans and to wildlife. Emily actually once said that wetlands are where the earth wakes up in the spring, and I think that's just a perfect way of putting it, because 75% of wildlife depends on wetlands at some point in their development. and they can be especially important for migrating birds coming through and stopovers looking for food, for creatures that need to lay eggs for the next life cycle. And, there's also a lot of human benefits as well. They kind of act as holding basins for snowmelt and rainfall. They help our communities from facing huge amounts of flooding. And then they also filter out contaminants and sediment as that water makes its way to rivers and eventually Lake Michigan for our drinking water. Now, 15% of Wisconsin is currently wetlands. That's just half of what we would have expected to see prior to European settlement. There are a lot of threats that are kind of working against our wetlands right now. One of the biggest is the impacts of urban sprawl and the fragmentalization of our wildlife corridors. All of this greater development leads to more pavement, which means greater runoff, and the use of road salt and other chemicals and pollutants on those roadways can be a huge problem. We also see the impacts of environmental species moving in and making areas inhospitable to these species. And then we are already seeing the effects of climate change on these ephemeral ponds and wetlands as well. Now, a monitoring season consists of 3 sessions. Each of these sessions will be about 6 to 7 days, depending on the weather. And they'll be triggered really by the conditions of the pond. So we're looking for above freezing temperatures and possibly a warm rainfall. Those are usually good signs that breeding species will be moving into the waterways. So each session will consist of 3 main activities. You'll have aquatic funnel trapping, which will be about 4 to 5 days in a row per session. And then we'll also have 2 visual encounter surveys, which will be egg mass and macroinvertebrate surveys. Those happen just once per session, so a total of 3 times per season. You can see below the skill level is moderate. We'll do a lot of on-hands training at our field training, and also there'll be a virtual orientation where you'll learn more about these species, so you don't need to have prior knowledge. However, the commitment level is high because it will demand that you get out into your site, into the field, when the coordinator reaches out to you, and it'll be triggered by these weather events. So we'll start with the aquatic funnel trapping. This is a great way to get our hands on species without having to harm them or hurt them in any way, and get those high quality ID photos so that we can really pinpoint what species are using our waters. So the success really depends on the timing. So we're trying to capture these frogs, these salamanders, sometimes fish, depending if you have an inundated site. We're trying to capture these species as they are moving into the ponds to breed. So on the first day, you'll actually set your traps. You could do your other monitoring that day as well, but you'll set your traps on the first day. And then on days 2 through 6, you'll go out and you'll check your traps daily. We do this to make sure that no species are spending too much time in these traps. Otherwise, it might harm them. You'll record the species that you find in each of your traps. And then the last day, you'll pull those traps out of the water so that they don't get damaged and no wildlife will be impacted by that. Overall, we'll be looking for frogs, salamanders. You'll also see crayfish. And again, sometimes you'll see fish in some inundated sites. Then you'll have your 2 visual encounter surveys. There'll be your egg mass survey, again, done just once per session. This will just consist of walking the perimeter of the pond. You can do this in or out of the pond, and you'll be looking for these egg masses. What's really nice is we can actually ID them based on the shape, size, color, and even a number of eggs that you'll find. So you'll record the presence of those, and then you'll also do a macroinvertebrate scoop survey, and you'll get a high-tech Tupperware dish, and you'll scoop just some important areas like leaf litter along logs or edges, and you'll look for macroinvertebrates or insects that are an important part of the food chain in the wetland. Overall, you'll just record all the species that you find. In some of these sites, aquatic funnel trapping will not be possible. This usually happens in sites where it's too deep for somebody to wade. Instead, you'll do a frog and toad call survey. What's nice is these are a little less labor intensive and less physically demanding. You'll go out to your site after sunset and record about 5 minutes of any calls that you hear. Later, you can go back and actually identify the species based on the calls. We'll give you the data sheets for that, and you'll send all those calls to me as well, and I can confirm any species. This is done just 3 times from May to July, but you're more than welcome to go out more often to collect data. So after today's presentation, if you are interested, you can email this email address. Otherwise, we'll have a sign-up form available. We'll have an online orientation that'll be available on Facebook, and I can also send out via email. Then we'll have an in-person field training in March, so we can actually set some traps and get our hands on some key species so we can practice identifying them. The next program, and this is actually the pilot season for this turtle basking program. This will be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to offer this, especially for people who really love wildlife photography. So a little background on our turtles and our ponds overall. Turtles are kind of the sanitation workers of the pond, so they'll eat just about anything from insects and worms and crayfish to even dead and decaying fish. So that really helps with cleanups after, we have like these freeze periods and have these huge fish kills. It's really helpful to keep these ponds clean. They also are an important part of their food web, as they can make up the diet of them, and their eggs can make up the diet of birds, coyotes, raccoons, snakes, and a whole plethora of species. They're threatened again by habit loss, climate change, increased predation, and we're also seeing commercial harvesting for the exotic pet trade as an issue. I don't know if you can see that little bump on the log actually isn't a turtle, it's a green heron that we were lucky to spot at Jacobus one day. Thought I'd just include that for my bird nerds. So first we have to understand why turtles bask. Turtles are exothermic, meaning they need external temperatures to regulate their internal body temperature. So they'll go into the water to cool down, into the sun to warm up. And in addition to that, they also need vitamin D. It aids with their digestion, and it also means that they can absorb calcium better, and more calcium means stronger eggs and a greater chance of survival. Sunlight can also be a great disinfectant and can reduce the risk of infections from fungus or remove parasites from their bodies. There are 6 species of turtles that you could expect to see in the county, though I will say that it'll be very unlikely to spot all of them in one spot, as some of them are specialists. There are also 2 non-native species in addition to this that look kind of similar to our painted turtle and to our musk turtle. They are the red-eared slider and the yellow-bellied slider. And don't worry, we'll go over ID in a future training and make sure everyone's on top of that. So timeline and commitment. This will require a moderate skill level. You're not expected to know a lot about turtles, but you will have to understand how to use your camera and have experience in photography so that we can get really high quality ID photos. And the commitment time is pretty low. You get to choose when you go outside and do your monitoring, as long as it falls within our temperature and weather parameters. There's just 5 sessions in the season. And they are about 15 to 30 minutes each. You're more than welcome to spend more time out there if you'd like. And the monitoring period is from May to July. So in order to complete your site visit, we ask for temperatures ranging from 50 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when you're most likely to see them, especially on sunnier days. And we ask that you vary the time that you visit, maybe pop over in the morning one day, in the evening another, just so we try to get a wide range of available times. So you're going to take high quality ID photos at your site. You're going to have to maintain quite a significant distance from your pond to make sure you're not going to force these turtles underwater, as that will make IDing much harder. And you're going to try to get close-ups of the key features, which we'll show you in a future slide. And then finally, there'll be a data sheet. They'll have contextual data, so like weather, time of day, wind code, stuff like that. And then I'll ask you to catalog your photo submissions, just so that we know where they came from and what date. And then we ask that you also record your volunteer time, so we know how many hours are being used in this program. So I love this photo. I think it's absolutely perfect for this program. Really, the photos are the most important part of your data submission. So we're looking of examples of the head, neck, and eyes. And then also the side profile, the scutes, and the side of the plastron can be extremely valuable, especially for some of these smaller species. And also it's best for the subject to fill the photo completely and to be entirely in focus. So if you're interested in this program, again, you can email us at the provided email address. I ask that you go over your equipment, make sure you have everything that you need, including a camera, possibly a tripod, stuff like that. You'll review the training that we'll have created for you prior to going out to your site. And then you'll actually join me out at your potential monitoring location so that we can scout out locations for you to set up your equipment. Thanks, and I'm going to pass it over to Hallie now.
Hello all, Hallie here. Let's go ahead and talk bumblebee monitoring now. So we are in the 5th year of the program for volunteers, going ahead and helping us out surveying the different bumblebee species in our parks. We are looking to attract a few more of you to go ahead and help us out, so let's see if I can convince you. The skill level and commitment level for this program are both mid-level, set at moderate, and the orientation is going to be held in June. I have a date set for June 17th, which is a Saturday. So primary goals for the Bumblebee Monitoring Program, we are establishing this baseline data. So we want to know which species we have in our parks, which habitat types are they using, where are bumblebees absent that we think that they should actually be occurring, what type of flower resources they are using, that sort of data. Then we go ahead and we go through all of this data, and it helps us inform our management decisions on the land, and the data that's been collected for the last 5 years has already informed multiple of our decisions for how we manage parkland. And of course, what brings us all here today, community science. We want to engage the public and honor community connections to the natural world. So why bumblebees? How did we end up deciding that we wanted to monitor this insect? Well, of course, as I'm sure many of you or most of you know, bumblebees provide valuable ecosystem services. They are vital to the environment. They are one of the foundational components for all of the pollination that they do of plant species that allows these plants to go ahead and reproduce and to continue existing. All of these flowers provide wonderful food and resources for a whole slew of different wildlife species, and also provide the habitat for many wildlife species as well. So incredibly important for the ecosystem. That's what bumblebees are. And then we've been seeing declines in bumblebees and more generally pollinators, insects, and invertebrates to extend that out. So we want to go ahead and understand why these declines are happening so that we can go ahead and do something about it proactively. We've seen increased public as well as scientific interest in bumblebees. There's been a big push in the last several years, especially, to go ahead and understand and better monitor bumblebees. If you take a look at that photo to the right there, that is a rusty patch bumblebee that was found on one of our park lands, and this species was listed as federally endangered in 2017, so almost 6 years ago now. And this was the first federally listed bee species in the continental US. So that just kind of shows you that conservation of insect species are certainly further behind many other species, namely vertebrates. So we can't be neglecting species like this. We really need to understand them and protect them. And then finally, why have we chosen bumblebees? They're relatively easy to observe. They're one of the larger insects in general. We only have a number of species of them. So whereas Wisconsin has 400 or 500 bee species, we only historically have 20 species of bumblebees. So with some practice, anybody can go ahead and be able to identify these species and tell them apart. This is the Cliff Notes version of the survey protocol. I'll go over this in more detail if you choose to join me for the orientation in June, but basically I'll work with you one-on-one to choose a natural area with suitable bumblebee habitat, and then I'll provide you with a map. An example is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you would like, I'm happy to conduct a site visit with you. You'll go out throughout the bumblebee season, so from April through October, 6 times at a minimum. You'll go ahead and look for different bumblebees based on different pattern, different coloring. So you'll try to find all the different looking ones and take photos of them. This is a photo voucher monitoring effort. So there's no handling of the bumblebees, but you'll go through there, you'll take those photos, and then basically you'll come back to your house later on, go through those photos, and you'll submit the different species to the Wisconsin DNR's webpage, the Bumblebee Brigade, or B3 for short. Then the experts there at B3 will sift through that data and verify your submissions. And at the end of the season, they send that directly to us at natural areas, so there's no need for you to submit it to multiple places. How long can you be out there doing surveys? You can be out there for 30 minutes or 3 hours if you're still finding different bees. That's really up to you. More information is always better, but we want this to fit realistically into your schedule. And if you want to go out there more than 6 times during the season, feel free. You can go out there up to about every week would be the maximum that we would say to gather this data. And then you may be wondering, you set your orientation in June, but you're saying that you can conduct your surveys a couple months earlier. That's because in late March to April, that's when queens start emerging from their overwintering sites. So they are out, but they're definitely quite a bit trickier to find and especially to photograph at that time of year. So I host the orientation later on when the first brood of workers end up coming out in June and the bumblebee numbers are higher so that you can reliably see them during the outside component of the orientation. Equipment, this also works very well for a community science monitoring program because if you just bring out your smartphone and then the field guides, that's pretty much all that you need to be monitoring these bumblebees. And then later on, access to the internet to submit those observations. And just going back, we'll provide you with a copy of this field guide on the right-hand side of your screen there to be able to help you identify the different bumblebee species. So taking photos, this is a big thing here. If you go ahead and cue into the 3 photos on the left-hand side of the screen, you really want to try to capture the individual bees from 3 different angles. So you want a nice clear shot of the head, you want one of the side showing the leg, the back leg there, and then one with the back, ideally with the wings open. That's going to help you be able to see the different patterns and the different colors of the bees to make a really strong and solid species ID. If you look at the 2 photos to the right there, when you're submitting these photos, you want to go ahead and curate them ahead of time. So you can see this is the same photo here, just zoomed in so that the bumblebee takes up the majority of the frame. All right, so this is the exciting stuff here. We're still documenting new locations of listed species and brand new bumblebee species as well. Looking at the right-hand side of the screen, in 2021, we found an American bumblebee, first time documented in the park system. And then last year, we found a confusing bumblebee, first time documented again. And our team really, our volunteers and then also our staff went out and really focused on trying to find the endangered rusty patch bumblebee, and we found it at 24 additional sites in 2022 alone. So this is really fantastic. This could be you at your local park documenting a new species or a new instance of an endangered or threatened species. Okay, so takeaways here, if you're kind of on the fence, is bumblebee monitoring for me, you might be wondering. I really think it is geared towards a detail-oriented person because you're going to be going back through these photos, zooming in on them on your phone, and trying to make these species IDs. I don't want to scare anybody away from the program with this, though, because this is really just your most informed decision when you submit it. If you're not sure what it is, B3 is going to be really kind and they'll go ahead and correct you if you make an incorrect ID, and they'll give you pointers as to why they chose one species over another. So it's really helpful, and they'll work with you to learn these species. You have to not mind going off trail if you really want to be a thorough bumblebee monitor. So this means that you're going to be respectful going off trail. This is one of the few instances where park patrons are actually allowed to do this because we do ask that when you visit parks, you stay on trail. So this is really an exciting opportunity that you get to see more of the park system than you otherwise would. But this does entail that you wear the right clothing to protect yourself from any harmful plant saps or ticks as well. And then, as I was already mentioning, if you're okay sorting through the photos, because sorting through the photos is likely going to take you more time than actually being in the field photographing the bees. And I put in one more thing, you're likely not going to be allergic to bees when you're out there. I've never been stung by a bumblebee, and I've done dozens and dozens of surveys. It's really more yellow jackets, if anything, that you'd want to watch out for. But once again, I've never been stung on a survey by anything. And now we'll transition to the final program. So native seed collection and also a new native seed cleaning program. So this was a brand new program as of last year. I piloted it with some wonderful volunteers. I focused on some of the volunteers who go ahead and do the WARE phenology walks on Monday mornings at the Nature Center, and also some master naturalists as well. So this program really does require a high skill level. mainly because you need to be very adept coming into the program with your plant ID skills. And then the commitment level is moderate to high, really depending on how many species you choose to collect. And then seed cleaning is a low skill level, doesn't really take a lot going into it. And then commitment level is moderate. It depends once again on how many species you choose to clean. The orientation, I haven't set a date yet, but it's going to be in either May or June. So program goals. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this really is a super important program because by collecting these seeds from our parkland and introducing them to other parks in the county, we want to go ahead and increase the number of native plants on the landscape to really bolster these populations. And by doing this locally, we're keeping the genetics local. So it's really giving these plants the best chance to go ahead and do well in these environments. The collection protocol overview, you'll go ahead and attend this orientation in person that will be held in May or June, like I said, and there will be an indoor component as well as an outdoor component to go ahead and get out there looking at the plants and looking at some of the seeds that are ripening. Then I'll work with you again one-on-one to figure out what collection site is going to work best for you, and we can do a site visit there. Then you'll choose which species to collect. I'm recommending that you choose anywhere from 1 to 5 species to keep it a little bit simpler so that you're not feeling overwhelmed. What's really key here is that you go out to your sites and scout them prior to seed ripening. This takes a little bit more time, but it's really going to get you familiar with the landscape, knowing where your plants are, where these populations are, and that you can identify these plants when they're in seed, because knowing the location is really going to help. I think a lot of people, even if they feel super confident identifying plants, I would go ahead and bet that the majority of the time it's when these plants are flowering, and they can look quite a bit different when they're in seed. So those prior scout visits, being familiar with the landscape, I can't emphasize how important that is enough. Then you'll gather the seeds as they ripen. Once again, April through November, there's a big time window there with all the different species that we have. So what works best for your schedule, that can go ahead and inform which species you choose. And then finally, another really key component here is that you deliver the seed to me, the program coordinator, in a timely manner. With a lot of these seeds, woodland seeds in particular, if they dry out, they lose viability and then they're not going to germinate. So this is really critical that you deliver them as soon as possible. And that delivery, what worked well last year is if you drop them off behind the counter at Ware Nature Center or at our office here in Wauwatosa at the intersection of 68th and State Street. And if necessary, I can work with you to pick them up at in a better way, if that works for your schedule. So equipment for this, I'll go ahead and provide you with this, a map of the survey site, and if not that, I will go ahead and do that site visit with you so that you feel comfortable with the location. And then I'll provide you with a plant ID field binder. You can see at the bottom to the left of the screen there, this is an example of one of the sheets from that binder. It's really photo heavy to go ahead and give you that visual of when the seeds are going to be ripe, to help you with species ID, all of that sort of stuff. And then it's got little notes typed in, hints to help you with ID there and really knowing when the seed is perfectly ripe. Proper clothing once again, because you'll be going off trail. And then I'll provide you with seed collection bags. These are just little brown paper lunch bags, Sharpie to go ahead and fill out all the necessary information on the bags so that we can keep track of all the details. And can give you data sheets and a clipboard and a pencil to fill out that information in the field. But what is new for this year of the program is I've created this Survey 123 form shown on the right side there that you can fill in all this information digitally. And that's going to really streamline the process. I think as a volunteer, that's going to be really helpful. And then as the coordinator of this program, that's super helpful for me as well. So you can do it the old-fashioned paper and pencil way, but you can also do it electronically like this. So program expectations. As I said, the biggest thing is that volunteers going into this program really are going to need to have strong plant identification skills because you're going to need to ID that target species when it's in seed and when it's perfectly ripe. The seed can't be collected too early or too late because that'll affect viability. You'll want to be able to differentiate from lookalike species too. That comes up more often than you might think. So ensuring that you're collecting the exact species that you want to be collecting. And then being able to identify invasive and weed seeds that are neighboring, because you don't want to contaminate your collection accidentally or accidentally without. So you just want to be able to identify these different plants, because if you were to contaminate a sample like this, then we would have to throw it all away because we don't want to have those species introduced to new locations. And then real quick on the cleaning seeds, I haven't asked volunteers to do this before, but what we really learned from this program for staff and volunteers collecting seeds, cleaning of the seeds is exponentially more time consuming than collecting of the seeds themselves. So if this is something you are interested in, you could take a species with you to your house, and you can do this while you sit in front of the TV and watch your favorite program. If you're somebody who likes to keep their hands busy while you're watching TV, this would be the perfect volunteer opportunity for you, and it would be extremely helpful for our staff if you are willing to do this. So there's different methods of seed cleaning, which I will go over in the orientation, but you can clean them by hand, or there are these different sifting screens. That's what this picture in the background is. They're actually sold as gold panning screens, but they work great for sifting out seeds. They're different mesh gauge right there. Yeah, so all different kinds of options there, depending on which species you choose to clean. So once again, the wrap up here is native seed collection for me, you're wondering. Those strong plant ID skills, of course. And then if you can set aside the time periodically, this is a little bit more time consuming during a certain chunk of the year. You might spend anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks periodically going out to get that perfect time for your seed. There are some that are more forgiving, especially with the prairie seeds that ripen later in the season where you don't have to check on it quite as much. But the woodland seeds earlier in the season are really the ones that we're looking for. So the time commitment can be a little bit more steep. And then once again, you have to be okay going off trail respectfully. Seed cleaning right there. The fact that if you can deliver it to me in a timely manner after the seed is cleaned, that's vital once again to make sure that we keep the seeds viable and that they're going to sprout. And then if you like to keep your hands busy while watching TV, this could be the perfect program for you. And with that, thank you so much for joining us for this first ever community science open house that we posted. We're very excited next year to be able to do it in person. So thank you for being flexible and watching this online.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Contact us. Feel free to contact us with any questions.